今天这集算是个番外篇吧。我一直以来都很喜欢骑自行车，念书时更因为 Lance Armstrong 的关系开始关注公路车赛事。当然了，这个曾经的7届环法总成绩冠军，最后因为禁药事件彻底归零。但是最初可不是这个样子。Lance 在 Beckhamp 之前一直是以高风亮节著名，他最有名的 Nike 广告就是
Everybody wants to know what I'm on. What am I on? I'm on my bike.
不过实际上真正把 Lance 整个惊天大案全盘托出的是他前美国邮政队友兼副将 Floyd Landis， 也是被取消资格的2006年的环法总成绩冠军。Landis 其实是个朴素低调的人，他纯粹是因为被 Lance 排挤到不行而转做污点证人。网络上关于他阐述当年的片段相当少，而美国知名记者 Graham Bensinger 访问他的片段是我认为值得一看再看的经典。
What role did Lance's training advisor, Dr. Ferrari, play in the use of illegal performance-enhancing drugs?
He's the best that there is in cycling and at giving advice.
Giving advice on what?
Yeah, giving advice on how to go about doing it, how to avoid being detected. He must have had sources within the anti-doping labs and other sources that would tell him how the tests worked, because they often try to keep it secret. But the things that we did were fairly well known anyway. We didn't do anything extremely exotic that I know of. If Lance did other things that we weren't doing, then I certainly didn't know about it. But blood transfusions, for example, and things like that, they're really not that complex. But he was the guy you'd go to ask him how to do it. He wouldn't physically show up at the tour. By that time, there probably was a time in his career, in his life, when he did. But by this time, he had been investigated once in Italy, and he didn't want to be seen around the team and things like that. So I know that the doctors and the riders had contact with him and gotten advice from him, but he didn't physically show up there and do this stuff. This was the doctors the team had hired.
What about the role Johan Bernil played?
He would orchestrate all of it
director.
between the doctors and the riders and things like that. He liked to boast a lot of times about how he was actually the team doctor. But
Really?
yeah.
Why?
Well, because he did. I mean, he was really knowledgeable about it, and it's not highly scientific stuff. I mean, you just have to physically know the amounts you can use and what you can use and things like that. And he liked to be the guy that knew what was going on and liked to orchestrate it all. And he was good at it. I mean, he's a smart guy. He was a good director.
What about Coach Chris Carmichael?
Well, he was a complete smokescreen. He's not a coach at all. Lance, at some point, decided to create a business. And Lance was, if I understand it correctly, at least he or some of his friends had equity stakes in this Carmichael Training Systems, which is his coaching business. And so it served a couple purposes. In fact, it was well known that Dr. Ferrari had at least questions and investigations into his giving advice for doping and cycling in the past. And so Lance didn't wanted to be seen as Ferrari was his coach. So they created a business to make some money with Carmichael Training Systems, and at the same time, it just deflected the information away from Ferrari being Lance's coach. But I can tell you that it didn't take me long to figure out that Carmichael had nothing to do with coaching Lance.
Nothing whatsoever?
No, because the first few months that I spent training with Lance in St. Moritz, you could check on Chris Carmichael's website to see what Lance had done that day, and I had physically spent the time with him. I knew what he did. I did what he did, and it was just fabricated. It wasn't even close. But he wasn't there. I mean, we never saw Chris Carmichael except maybe at the tour he would come with some of his clients. I would venture a guess that Carmichael talked to Lance once a month and not about training. He's not the coach.
Don Catlin, who ran UCLA's Olympic anti-doping lab for 25 years, what was his role in everything?
Well, it's become evident now that he's been involved in some cover-ups of testosterone positives for Lance Armstrong, but the only relationship that I know for sure between them, Armstrong and Don Catlin, is that Don Catlin was allegedly going to conduct this anti-doping program for Armstrong in 2009, I believe, when he made his comeback. They announced it with, at some sort of press conference, and it was going to be the greatest anti-doping program ever, but within 2 or 3 months, they just... I mean, one of the dumbest quotes I ever heard, Don Catlin said that they decided that sometimes when you try something so so big and difficult, sometimes it's best to just quit. And that's what he said.